Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Fort Worth 148 Masonic podcast. My name is Evie Kirkendall. I'm a past master and chaplain for Fort Worth 148.
I am Brandy Patton, the current Worshipful Master of Fort Worth 148.
I'm Cody Cox, the current Senior Warden of Fort Worth 148.
And today we have a special guest.
Omar Galeazzi, Junior Warden, Fort Worth 148.
This week you'll find out why we have this particular constellation of officers in just a moment, but we want to welcome Omar. This is his first visit with us at the podcast, and he's probably going to be a recurring contributor as we move forward. So get used to hearing him. Most of you probably already know him because he's
probably visited your lodge.
He's probably visited your lodge and
you.
given you a lapel pin and maybe even taken a lapel pin from you. Yeah, if you see him around, you can put a name with a voice.
And I think he's been on another podcast before, but not ours.
Oh, that's right.
He
was on somebody else's podcast for hours.
We see how that works.
You have to be released, though.
Yeah, we won't hold a grudge.
You have to be released. No, actually, it was released on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dadgummit. We thought we were bringing our listeners exclusive content here.
Speaking of this, the last one from the podcast we're talking about has Greg Wright on it, because I was listening to that in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's like we're taking over the podcast world.
We're multiplying.
We're multiplying. Yeah, like glitter in a craft room.
Oh, gosh.
As we always do, we always like to start off the podcast with a kind of a lighthearted topic. Many of you might know that we've had some sound technical challenges with our audio. And so one of our previous episodes, it was so not good audio-wise that our audio engineer, Brandy, decided that he was just going to pull it off the podcasting platform, and we're just going to say farewell to that episode.
Yeah, you make the guy the Worshipful Master, and he's just, nope, we're not listening to that one.
And we decided we were going to discuss one of the topics as our warm-up today that we've already talked about before. But we're doing it with a fresh voice, and Omar's got some, I'm sure, a hot take or two on it. So we're going to talk about lapel pins. How many?
Favorite.
Where should you wear more than one? Is it just one? What are the rules? How do we feel about it?
And again, it's Masonic flair, not just lapel pins.
Masonic flair,
Yes.
that's true, because...
How many pieces of flair are appropriate?
yes. Do
For
you
those
only
of
want
you
to do
that
the
don't get
minimum of
that-
15 pieces of flair? Or do you really want to show your Masonic spirit and wear more than that?
And if you don't know where that came from, come and find us at Grand Lodge, and we will direct you to your next piece of cultural trivia.
Yeah, if you haven't... And that movie still holds up today.
It holds
You'll be
up
patiently
well.
waiting for the results of that search.
And if you happen to know the answer, for everybody else who doesn't know, comment down below in whatever podcasting platform you're listening to, so the rest of the world can be on this really bad
at Bennigan's.
joke. All right, let's talk about it. Lapel pins. Yes, no, maybe, 1 + 1.
Okay, so we talked about this last time, and I'll bring it up again in this conversation. One of the things that we need to think about when we wear lapel pins is, what is the purpose? Why am I wearing them? And what might it look like to someone who doesn't know what all of those pins mean? Does it look like I'm showing off, or those types of things? So let me pepper the conversation first with that idea. And I'll go ahead and put myself on the chopping block first. And my opinion is that you should wear one pin.
I agree with that. One very special pin that is relevant to the situation. But you know what? If you want to wear 10, do you? That's fine too.
What do you think, Omar?
I agree with the one, but I do wear two. Usually it's a Fort Worth 148 pin, and then either a very unique pin that I have, or just during my travel, my new recent pin. So like next meeting, you'll probably see me with the Massachusetts Grand Lodge pin, just because I just came back from Boston and visiting the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts.
If I'm being honest, I'm like Brandy. If you want to wear 10 lapel pins, you do you, boo. I am not here to judge. I'm not here to kink shame. No yucking your yum here. However, I will say this. I do believe that if you're going to wear 10 or 15 or 20 lapel pins, you have to ask yourself, how much work is any one lapel pin doing on your lapel or on whatever you're wearing them on? Because if you're wearing 20, is anybody really going to come in and look at all 20 of them? And are you doing any service to any of the organizations that you're wearing those pins for? Because whenever I wear one lapel pin, I like the fact that if somebody notices it, they notice the organization or the meaning behind that one single lapel pin. If I'm wearing 10 or 15, is the one that is the most important to me really being noticed? Am I doing any, is that organization being recognized for being on my lapel? And that's what I want, because if I'm wearing a lapel pin, I want it to be noticed, and I want the organization that I'm associated with to be noticed as a result.
And not just kind of lost in the cloud.
Exactly. It's advertising 101. We wear lapel pins to get the attention, to give attention and to meaning to either an organization or a cause that we are passionate about. And if you're wearing 15 of them, it's like that old business saying, if you focus on everything, you're focusing on nothing.
Yeah.
And so if you have 15 lapel pins, are you really focusing on anything, or are you just saying, look at me, I'm shiny?
Look at how many organizations I belong to. So let's throw this over to Omar. So Omar, we know that you belong to quite a few organizations and things like that. So you probably have a lot to say on this one.
Do you know how many you're a member of?
Can you count?
Oh, man. So obviously Blue Lodge used to belong to the Shrine, the Grotto, Scottish Rite, belong to...
You don't have to say the secret ones.
Yeah, the secret ones. I belong to Texas Chapter 362, Texas Council 321, Worth Commandery 19, Worth Hiram Abiff, AMD, and Knight Masons, Frank G. Callan in Hillsboro. I'm also the Vice Grand for Fort Worth Oddfellows 251. And then I helped reconstituted San Jacinto number 1, which is another appendant body within the Oddfellows. So part of the encampment, the canton, and also I am a member of the Noble Order of Muscovites, which is a side degree in Oddfellows, which is cool because in Oddfellows, you can create your own side degrees to perform them and raise money as a fundraiser. And then also I'm a turtle.
I think you left out one, the High 12.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Can't believe I left that one out. So I am a charter member of North Texas High 12 Club 811. So I'm the second vice president of that one.
In other words, if somebody from High 12 was listening, Omar used to be up on the list for the High 12.
Sure, Brother Dion will keep him in charge.
Yeah.
So tell us, Omar, so what with the pins, what are you thinking as far as when you wear your pin? You said normally you wear like maybe 2 or something like that. What is your intent behind wearing those pins? Do you have a specific purpose? What's going on?
If it's one of our meetings, I'll wear a very unique pin. So one of my favorite ones that I get the most compliments on is Ellenwood, Colorado pin that I have that has the 2 pillars on it and has two jewels, rhinestones or some kind of jewels on top to kind of represent the 2 globes on top. But if I'm out traveling, I'll wear a Fort Worth 148 pin and then just another very unique pin that a lot of people don't see. But to Ebby's point, I think when you start going past 2 or more and you start really covering up both lapels and then your vest that you're wearing and then your tie and pins, I think people tend to stay away from you and not really get interested in all the pins because you automatically get associated, or at least in my eyes, you start looking like a North Korean general. And people are just off-put by it. This is just way too much going on him. And you get people who want to talk about every single pin, and you're just like, I just don't have the time to discuss 50 pins that you're wearing.
And Evie, if I remember correctly, in the last conversation we had, you had brought up the idea of when we wear a pin, another thing that we're trying to do is maybe if we're wearing it, we're trying to find other people that are like-minded or associated with that particular organization or idea. You want to talk to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if I'm wearing a Fort Worth 148 pin, to Omar's point, I want people to know where I'm coming from and celebrate that. If I'm a member of the York Rite or chapter council commandery, or if I'm a Shriner or a member of one of the affinity groups within the Shrine, I want people to know that I'm a part of that organization. So when I go out and I'm traveling, if someone else is a part of that organization, they come up and maybe we can grab a pint or something like that after a meeting, or I can find out a little bit more about what's going on in that world. I don't know that there's any better way to say I am part of that organization better than wearing a lapel pin or something like that. So yeah, I think it's a great way to communicate your membership, just the same way that we put stickers on the back of our cars to let people know that we're part of an organization.
And of course, remember, if you're wearing that particular pin, you're also advertising for that group. So make sure that you act right when you have those pins
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. One of the things that I think is really important, and this is just in general, is if you're wearing a Square and Compasses hat, or you are wearing a lapel pin, or you're wearing a ring or a T-shirt, whatever. There was an organization I was in during college that we made a point that you can't be seen in locations that serve alcoholic beverages with anything that affiliates you with that organization. Now, I'm not saying that should be the rule for Freemasons, but what I am saying is that if you are at a place where maybe that location would do a disservice being connected to Freemasonry, it would be a good idea for you not to associate yourself with those, because you're representing Freemasonry whether you want to or not. If you're wearing a Square and Compasses hat to an opium den, then you're telling people that, that's
Apparently you
what
live in the
Masons do.
Old West.
Yeah.
You're somewhere out where they still have an opium den.
But I think it's important for us to remember that when we are wearing those things out, we're representing the craft. And if somebody sees us doing something, it's kind of like that old saying. I think we've talked about it at some point. When you have a sticker of the Square and Compasses on the back of your car, and you're zipping through traffic, cutting people off, brake checking people, you're advertising for Freemasonry in the worst way possible.
In a very bad way.
And that is going to carry over into people's perception of your organization. So the same thing holds true whenever you're wearing something on your person.
And I think it's also important to mention at this point, we had issued a challenge to people the last time we talked about this. So let's reissue that challenge. And that is, at Grand Lodge, we are going to be cycling our pins. So don't be surprised if you see somebody from 148 with one pin on Saturday morning and another pin on Saturday afternoon.
Saturday 10 o'clock, Saturday 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have enough pins to do one after each boat.
It'll be like the Grand Master switching out gavels.
Yeah.
It's 148. It's time to change the pins, gentlemen.
So at random point, should we just yell out loud, change your pins?
We talked about on the one that we're not releasing, how do you store your pins? I store mine in a mason jar.
Oh,
that's right. We had that
the
clever
mason
pun.
jar.
The mason jar pun.
I store mine. I found them on Amazon. They're like banners, and you just pin them through, and so you can see them and stuff like that. So I store that. Omar, how do you store yours?
I have 2 cloth aprons that are pretty old, and I just stick them through that and just have them hanging up on aprons.
I literally do store mine in a mason jar with my coins. I've only been a mason for 5 years, so I don't have, but maybe a couple hundred pins.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yes. And we had mentioned this last time. Let's go through the folks that are here. What is your favorite pin?
And why?
Oh, and why? So, Brandy, we'll start with you.
On the spot. So probably the favorite one's the Indian Degree pin. It's from the Oklahoma Indian Degree team. It's a Dream Chaser. It's pretty big. It's colorful. It's just a nice looking pen, and people ask about it. So that's my favorite one. I got it at one of their degrees, at Outdoor Degree at Grapevine Lake a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah. That
You helped
Brad
organize?
here. Oh, Omar has to think. Jeez.
Yeah, I got a couple. I think probably
You have to choose one, okay?
my most favorite pin is Corinthian Lodge. I believe it's 414 414 out in Tennessee. And that one's probably my favorite one because I went and watched 2 of their degrees, Master Mason's degrees. And being from Texas, they pulled me to the side, took me in their museum, and as they were moving a cabinet around, they found the secretary's records for Brother Sam Houston. And so it had his initiation date, when he was made an EA, when he was passed to the degree of Fellowcraft, when he was raised to a Master Mason, and then when they suspended him for dueling another Mason. and then unsuspended him and brought him back into the fraternity. So I got to sit in the lodge that Sam Houston was raised in, and I got a lapel pin from them. So I think that one's pretty special.
I wish I had a story that was that compelling. Mine is simply my pin that has the Air Force logo on it because I'm a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, and I like being able to celebrate both of those things together because they were both formative in my adulthood understanding of the world around me.
My favorite pin is my 148 pin. No, it's fine. It's not my favorite pin.
The new one we've just ordered?
Hey, listen, secrets. No, my favorite pin that I have it's an older Masonic pin. I got it from my uncle's father, who was a Mason in California, and it, instead of having a pin on the back, it actually has a screw-on back because the little jewels in it are actually diamonds. And so back in the day, they didn't want to lose these things, so they would screw them on. So it's got like teeth on the back of it. So I wear that to really nice occasions, like when we have the black tie gala and stuff like that. I'll put that in the tuxedo and stuff like that. But I wear that on... it's my favorite pin, but I wear it rarely because it's old and I don't want to lose it. But it has a lot of meaning for me.
Wah, wah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that the overall consensus, though, is that if you want to wear 15, 20 pins, go ahead. More power to you. I'm not gonna judge you for it, and neither are we. But I think that I think it's important to be circumspect about why we're wearing the pins and what is the purpose behind it. And if you're wearing a pin because you want to draw attention to an organization, putting it in a whole bunch of other, like a pin pile on your lapel, is not helping that organization. And it's not helping anybody recognize you as being part of that organization.
And if Kim Jong-un is listening, thank you for listening to our podcast.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. If you happen to be a North Korean military leader, yeah.
Yes.
Congrats.
Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to Fort Worth 148.
Oddly enough, I can look where our listeners are from, and yes, North Korea has one listener.
Really? Maybe
Oh, wow.
it is the
Again,
it is the
thank
Supreme
you for
Leader.
listening, Supreme Leader. We're so glad you're here with
Totally
us.
made that up, but it just rolled with it.
That makes me sad now.
It
One
would-
of their generals are jealous.
It would
Oh,
be
geez.
funneled through China anyway if they do.
That's
So-
true.
Which
Yeah.
we do have listeners in China. We have
Yeah. And welcome, China. Thank you.
Oh, welcome, everyone.
Thank you. We are nothing if not a diverse group of people. It's time to transition to our main topic today. We like to peruse the internets and see what spicy topics are going on out there and find out what everybody's talking about in the world of social media. And a topic kind of bubbled up to the top in all of our conversations for planning this particular episode. There was a brother. Everybody's going to know exactly who it is. I'm always reticent to mention other brothers who are not here because their perspectives are
Dearest
not always...
Martha's pen pal.
And they're but I'm always reticent to mention other brothers' names if they're not here on the podcast. And I don't know that I've always followed that rule, but I'm trying to be cognizant of that.
He's been on our podcast, though.
Yeah, he has.
And he does his own podcast.
I would love to have him here. I wish that we could have him here, but we decided this at the last minute, and he lives across the state. But anyway, he brought up the topic of the progressive line, and his perspective seemed to me to suggest that he's not a huge fan of it necessarily, that it doesn't necessarily need to be as prescribed as we Masons sometimes make it.
I think the argument that was being made was the idea that we have this kind of pipeline. It's almost like we're bringing people into the lodge, and the very first place that we shove them is into the line to be officers. The interesting thing is we talked about this, but we have an opportunity to really talk about that because we have the quote-unquote progressive line of lodge officers here in the room today. So we can talk about this as we think of, and we're going to use the phrase, should tradition prevail, we have the people that are going to be moving up.
But it's also a beautiful example of how sometimes it doesn't work.
Absolutely. I
True.
think we're definitely going to dig into that. One of the things, just for context, that I think that our listeners also need to know is that in some lodges, the elected line starts with the junior steward.
Mm-hmm.
At Fort Worth 148, we have adopted the Grand Lodge model, where our elected line starts at the junior warden. So every other role, with the exception of the secretary and treasurer, are appointed positions by the worshipful master as to be a part of his team. The junior warden, senior warden, worshipful master, secretary, and treasurer are the principal officers at our lodge that are actually elected.
No, I think what we're talking about is the idea that there are some lodges out there where the idea is that as soon as you become junior deacon, the idea is that next year you're going to progress to senior deacon, which means that you're going to progress to junior warden and so on and so forth. There are even some lodges where the deacons are those as well. Okay, so what you're talking about is that we have some lodges out there where the progressive line starts where you're a junior steward, and so the next year you would be senior steward and so on like that. There's some lodges where that doesn't happen until you are appointed into the junior deacon spot, and then at 148 we have the elected line that starts at the junior warden spot. So that's where we're starting with this conversation.
I'll just express that I was extremely fortunate this year that I have more officers than spots, which isn't great for the officers. Or I have more people eligible than I have officer spots. So every slot is filled, and I feel bad about a couple of guys that I couldn't give slots to. Most lodges don't have that, and the Texas is so bad that we don't even have to have stewards anymore. The Grand Lodge law allows us not to if we change our bylaws, which we didn't, but I've got backups for stewards. We've got an actual musician that it's not really a musician, it's another role, but we're fortunate that we have enough members right now to fill all the slots. A lot of lodges don't, which I understand why the progressive line doesn't work in those lodges, but hopefully it does in ours.
And I also think that that's just all context for, I think the larger conversation here is the idea that was also being posited is that if you are making the progressive line, such that the worshipful master only gets to be in the East for 1 year, if we think of the worshipful master as the CEO of the lodge, why do we want to cycle a new CEO into that position every single year like clockwork?
And especially if they're doing a good job.
Yeah, especially if they're leading the lodge in a way that is leading it to success and vitality. Why would we want to lose that in terms of the leadership? And I think that there's the other side of that coin too, for the argument that what if no one else really wants to be as involved as that person is in the leadership of the lodge? Should we necessarily just say, oh, your year is up, you're now into the north with the other crotchety old past masters? Or do we go ahead and say, let's keep you in for another year or 2 or 3 and work that way? What are your thoughts on that?
I know this is Grand Lodge level. I'm not sure how they do it at Blue Lodge level, but in Massachusetts, the Grand Master is Grand Master for 3 years. I agree with you. 1 year, especially like at a Grand Lodge level, even at a Blue Lodge level that's very active like ours, how much can you really get done in that year? And what positive changes can you really make when you have a very active lodge like ours where we have a lot of events that are already scheduled and we do them on a yearly basis? I don't think a year you can really put your mark on a lodge and really make some positive changes in it. I'm okay with 2 years or 3 years. If he's doing a good job and the lodge feels like he's doing a good job and he wants to go another year, it shouldn't be an automatic, okay, now you're a past master, you're moving out. Don't even think about trying to run again. And I think that's a mentality that we have here in Texas is you do your year, you're pretty much out of it. Don't even think about trying to run again, which if somebody does a really good job and the lodge is progressing and we're doing a lot of great stuff and people are showing up and you have a high attendance rate and he wants to run again, by all means, run again.
I think that's great. Here's the thing that I think of when I think of a progressive line that is, when we take that idea, is that we have to think very pragmatically about what does it mean to be a past master. A past master means that you get to vote at Grand Lodge. That is a voice of your lodge. And so if you have more past masters in your lodge, that means you have a stronger voting block in your lodge. So therefore, there is this kind of, I won't say cynical incentive, but there is definitely an incentive to keep cranking through people in a lodge so that you can have a stronger voting block. And I'm not sure that, I know that this has never been brought, I've never heard anyone say that they're doing this in their lodge for that purpose. But I know in some of the larger lodges in the larger metropolitan areas who want to have a greater say in the goings-on of the Grand Lodge, having more past masters means a greater voice, whether by hook or by crook. So there is this weird incentive. What do y'all think about that?
I think when we talk about the idea of cranking out the past master so that your lodge gets the vote, or having that voting block, so to speak, I think that also might take into consideration that your lodge is actually like producing quality past masters that actually want to show up to Grand Lodge. We've been to Grand Lodge quite a few times, and I'm starting to get to the point now at Grand Lodge that I know who's going to be there, but I know that there's more than just those guys from that particular lodge. So it always kind of makes me wonder, where are the rest of your past masters? Where are the guys that actually can have a vote? We're showing up to Grand Lodge. I know that there's more than like 3,500 of us out there. And remember, the past master vote when we're at Grand Lodge, for those of you guys that are there, usually we constitute maybe like 55% of the vote or something like that. So that may not necessarily be something that a lot of lodges are thinking about when it comes to pumping out masters.
I
One
also
thing-
know that. Oh, go ahead.
And one thing we do to incentivize past masters is we actually do have the Airbnb that we get. Hopefully, perpetually we get one, and we just makes it easier because we're all grouped together. We got transportation back and forth. We feed you. We want our past masters there to be that voting block, and we get. Since I've been raised, there's 2 past masters I know of that don't usually show up, but the rest do. All the ones I've met do.
Well, and
show
I
up.
also know that in 148, because we've had, as long as I've been a member of 148, we always get an Airbnb. It used to be the one that's across the street from Grand Lodge. This year, somebody stole it from underneath us.
If we find out who you are,
When
We're TPing,
But that's-
we're
we love
TPing the
you,
house.
But let's be honest, we got a better one.
Oh, we do.
This might be a blessing. But at any rate, ever since I've been a member of 148, that house we started off with a much smaller number of past masters. We had a lot of non-voting members who would go to Grand Lodge, and many of those people have become past masters. And now we have probably 60 to 70% of those people
Yeah.
are now voting members of Grand Lodge.
I want to say probably last year, I think we had somewhere around 10 or 11 voting members of Grand Lodge at the Airbnbs.
And we didn't do this we're not one of those lodges we're cranking
No.
out past masters to affect the vote at Grand Lodge. But it has had that effect. And I wonder if you as a lodge slow down, even if you're having a great year and you have somebody who is really leading the lodge to sustainable success, and they stay in the East for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, that's 2, 3, 4 past master votes that are now no longer votes
Yeah.
or possible votes. And so I wonder if that's part of it.
To Cody's point about the past masters showing up, what was it, like 2 years ago? Like the largest group of
Yeah,
Masons
at Grand-
at Grand
Mhm.
Lodge, and it was like 3,700, somewhere around there, 35 to...
It was right after COVID.
Yeah, at 35 to 3,700 showed up. And to Cody's point, I believe there's 50 to 55,000 Masons in the state of Texas. We have 742 lodges, and every time they do the attendance, is 300 lodges show up. Not even half the lodges are represented in the state of Texas.
And if you think about, this is just a big show up to Grand Lodge and vote ad, but think about, if you want to think about who's making the decisions for the future of Masonry in Texas, it represents less than 10% of the total Masons in Texas are the ones who are deciding
And making the call.
what is going on at Grand Lodge. And we know that,
which is double the midterms. Just saying.
right, but if you think about as a fraternal organization, if you're really wanting to shape the future of Masonry and you have a vote at Grand Lodge, by all means, you should be showing up, because the only way that we're going to keep Freemasonry vibrant and amazing in the state of Texas is if people show up to vote. So there's my Grand Lodge spiel.
And since we're talking about the progressive line and these types of things, I'm going to go ahead and throw that wrench out there. And I've told people about this before. I am not necessarily a progressive line guy because I think we have this kind of pervasive idea that, oh, that guy served as the junior deacon, therefore he should be the senior deacon. Or, oh, that guy served as the senior warden this year. It's only right for him to be worshipful master next year. I get concerned when I hear that type of talk because just because you have served in a position doesn't necessarily mean that you are ready to move on. If you need 2 years in the senior warden spot in order to prepare yourself for becoming master of the lodge, then I think by all means the lodge should take that into consideration. If the lodge as a body believes that somebody has the potential to be worshipful master, but they're not ready quite yet, then I think the lodge should have the fortitude to go, you know what? We see this and we recognize this in you, but you need time. It concerns me sometimes when I hear people talking about those things again, such as he deserves this because he did this for 1 year. What do you guys think when you hear that?
I think if you're secretary for 2 years, you're entitled to jump to the south or the west.
Listen, some things happen for a particular reason.
Hey, I did it.
Well, but
You did it.
But I think that's part of the culture of 148 is that the South or the junior warden is an elected position. And so there is no expectation at Fort Worth 148 that you go from the senior deacon into the South, because anybody can run for and make themselves available.
You really got to want it to be senior deacon.
Yeah, we've adopted senior deacon as the role where you quote unquote prove yourself, and it's the proving ground for leadership.
Well, and I think, Brandy, you and I have talked about it. We said it was like an audition almost.
Yeah, and that's great, and I support that. However, we also know, though, because we elect, just because somebody is the senior deacon doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who is the secretary isn't going to step out from behind the desk and make themselves available for the South, or somebody from another lodge or from another jurisdiction makes themselves available for that role, comes into the lodge, maybe has only been there for a year, and is, hey, I have all the leadership skills and the lodge is behind it. I see no reason for the will of the lodge that there is no expectation in any of the roles, even if it's senior warden today, and even if Cody is our senior warden right now. If we were to decide there's a more qualified person at 148, we could, in theory, vote that person into the East. That's why we're always saying, should tradition prevail?
I am not available again.
But the tradition, it's a tradition. It's not a rule. And sometimes we talk about these things as though they're monolithic. Like we can't buck tradition and say, because we had this, one of our first episodes was about tradition. Should we hold on to it? And there are times and places when a worshipful master needs to stay in place. There are times and places when a senior warden needs to stay in place, or a junior warden, or a secretary, or a treasurer. We've had our treasurer now for what? 5 years?
4 or 5 years?
Yeah,
I think it was Jeremy's years. Jeremy's year was the first year. No, it's longer than that.
It was Billy's year.
Yeah, it was Billy Hamilton's year. So he's been in there for 7 years now. God, goodness,
Don't
almost
say
a
that
decade.
out loud. I don't want to lose. Oh, I'm not going to lose him. Don't say it out loud. Cody didn't want to lose him.
Cody's going to lose him. No, but
gosh darn it, should tradition prevail?
Should tradition prevail? Yeah, I'm a man of two minds here. I like the idea that one of our past masters, who's the Masonic luminary of 148, he's a proponent of the progressive line because he believes, and I think rightly, that progressive line should be used not only as a proving ground, but also as a crucible for leadership, a place that we're teaching leadership skills to those people who are coming up through the line. So we don't expect that somebody who's elected to the junior warden should be ready to be worshipful master. We expect them to be ready to learn how to be worshipful master.
But a huge variable y'all didn't have, is our 175th is coming up. So my junior deacon pick is going to be the word. Assuming it happens, he'll be the worshipful master for our 175th. It's a huge event for him.
Yeah. And that was also something I think that was discussed with...
He was well aware before he
Yeah.
agreed to take the slot.
So I think when we're talking about this one, I don't think it's too much for us to talk a little family business on the podcast, since this is a 148 podcast, and we have the progressive line here, we can discuss the reason why I stepped out from behind the secretary's desk and how we're going this, because I know that there's many lodges out there. In fact, some of the lodges that I'm a member of have had to do this, where it's not the idea that we just have this automatic turnover. What happens when there's a hiccup? So we'll just talk family business here. At 148, there was going to be a gap in the line, and we knew that Omar was making himself available for junior warden. And at that point, we knew that he was the only one that was making himself available. So what it looked like is that Omar would ostensibly make himself available, and he would have to go right into the senior warden spot. I know that for myself, where I was worshipful master before, I did some line hopping to get to that spot. Evie, I believe that you did some line hopping as well.
In my year, we had a gap in our leadership. The senior warden decided not to progress and make himself available for the East, which meant that I went from the senior deacon to making myself available for senior warden. And so I am one of the few people at 148 who never got to be the junior warden, and I had to, I don't recommend it for anybody, by the way.
And our junior deacon jumped to the junior warden. So
Yeah,
right.
so
And
it
that's
was
what we're talking about. So, for instance, myself being senior warden this year, this is actually the first time that I have served in the chair as senior warden, because at Tarrant, I went from junior warden to worshipful master. So when we had this discussion, and I know that we had talked about this kind of amongst ourselves and things, was the idea of if Omar's making himself available and he goes automatically to the senior warden spot, what are we robbing him of in terms of training and being able to get ready, so that we're setting him up for the best possible scenario when he makes himself available for the East? Do we want to talk a little bit about that? About, again, if your lodge is a progressive line type thing, you already have, or you're going to run into a time where someone is going to have to step out because of family issues or something like that. Or there's somebody in the line that the lodge has put into that position and now has come to the realization that, you know what, maybe this person isn't the best fit right now or ever at this point. How does the lodge tackle that? Let's discuss that a little bit.
I know that in Fort Worth 148, the junior warden is a significant position.
Very.
They are responsible for putting together our black tie gala. They're responsible for ensuring that all of our catered meals for our stated meetings are taken care of. Any catered meals that we provide for instance, the NWSA, or if there's Texas Lodge of Researches being hosted at the temple, we are often the lodge that is asked to facilitate those things. And it's Masonic Family Day,
148 Family Day.
Yeah, all of these things, all of the events that we do, it's the junior warden that is responsible for those. And in many lodges, the stewards are that person who handles the food and the beverages and such. But at 148, because the junior warden is the elected job, we put it on their shoulders to ensure that it's done. Now, do they actually have to physically do the cooking or do anything? No, it's their responsibility to delegate those responsibilities if need be. But oftentimes it's just easier for the junior warden to hop online or make a phone call to the caterers and such like that.
Got to take care of us 148ers when we're
yeah,
at refreshment.
but in other lodges, it might not be as big of a deal. But because I personally didn't get to be the junior warden, I had to rely on the gifts and graces of other people around me to inform me about what was going on in the junior warden's role when it was my year as senior warden, and then even more importantly, when I was in the East, to make sure, because weren't you my junior warden?
Sean.
Sean?
Yeah, I was your junior warden.
Yeah, so Brandy was the junior warden during my year, and by the way, he was an amazing
like a true
junior warden
during my year.
Yeah, I know, right? But this is one of those things where I'm not saying it was this way in my year for a reason. Brandy set a standard for what the junior warden's role can and should be.
Sorry, Omar.
That hasn't. Big shoes to fill, but he did it seamlessly, and he's the one who set up many of the things now that we have in place that have turned our Black Tie Gala basically into a turnkey event where we literally send some emails, make a couple of phone calls, and it just happens. The inertia is there. But I never got to experience that. So I had to rely on basically the kindness of my brothers to shepherd me through this. And I think that you're going to experience something very similar. I think that anybody who has skipped a chair understands that they're missing out on some valuable formative things about how the lodge actually operates.
Well, the beauty, sorry, the beauty of the progressive line though is Omar's actually worked with our stewards. They had a meeting together to plan out the year of what they're doing. I never did that. I never really worked with my steward. I had one steward. We have two now, but it's great because when those guys are ready to come up, they already know the basics of it, so they're prepared.
And see, for me, one of the things when we talk about this, my experience going from junior warden to worshipful master was the fact that when I was elected to the junior warden spot, I thought that there was going to be time for me to prepare for quote unquote my year. And then, that didn't happen. I felt like I started my worshipful master year already way behind. And so at the end of my year, I can truly say that there were things that I did not accomplish that I wanted to because of that. So with that being said, when we talked as officers prior to the election and we talked about some of this stuff, the idea is that whoever was coming into the line, we already knew what it was like to be chair hoppers. So we didn't want people to have to hop chairs. So Omar, why don't you speak to this? How are you feeling? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I remember when the whole situation came up and me, you, and Brandy kind of sat down and talked about what I was thinking. And I remember telling y'all, I want to be junior warden just for that simple fact of how much work is involved. And you really do learn a lot about the lodges, the comings and the goings of the lodge. And it really sets you up to move into senior warden and then worshipful master. I really didn't want to jump junior warden just because I feel like in our lodge, not necessarily a bad thing, but it scares away people to join the line and be a junior warden just because how much work and everything that you're responsible for and the standard that the past junior wardens have set for our lodge and how nice our Black Tie Gala is, the food that we eat, the summer solstice that we're going to have again this year that we had last year. It's a lot of responsibility, and going into that, I knew that being able to handle all that stuff would set me up for senior warden one day and hopefully worshipful master one day. So I think when somebody makes themselves available, at least in our lodge for junior warden, they understand that it's a lot of responsibility and it's a great learning opportunity for you as you advance through your Masonic career.
Do you feel like when, you knew what was going on with the line and stuff like that, did you feel that when discussions were had and things like that, did you ever at once feel like the people that were talking were trying to take the opportunity away from you to become senior warden, or were you a little appreciative of the fact that it was, yes, I get to be junior warden and I get to experience all of those chairs?
I was appreciative of it because I felt like it was given to me the option, right? It wasn't presented as, hey, I'm going to take senior warden, Brandy's going to go worshipful master, you have to go junior warden. I was given the option hey, you can go junior warden, this is the plan we have. Or if you want senior warden, you can go to senior warden and that's fine as well. And here's the plan for the junior warden. So I think with our lodge and how close we are and how we can just openly communicate and figure out the best solution, I felt like I was given the power to choose. Did I want to go junior warden or did I want to jump to senior warden? And I picked going to junior warden just because the job that Brandy did and kind of everything that he set in motion, I felt like if I could do half as good a job as what he did, I would be good moving forward to senior warden and hopefully one day worshipful master.
And I think the other thing that we've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times is that I think by using some of the things that we've experienced, hopefully this can help other lodges that may be experiencing something like this currently or are going to in the future, that we can bring some value to the fraternity. And the other thing is, if your lodge is not having these types of conversations because it's too uncomfortable, you need to make it comfortable. These are conversations that your lodge needs to have because your lodge is worth these types of discussions.
Absolutely. As I was listening to all of us, this conversation, I kind of reflected on how sometimes from an ivory tower, it sounds like we're talking when we sit as 148, because many of the challenges that a lot of smaller lodges have, we don't ever have to face. There are going to be people that are listening to our podcast who are members of lodges that maybe can barely open an entered apprentice lodge because they don't have enough members that show up on a regular basis to even open an EA that they have to open either as a fellow craft or a master mason's lodge. And us talking about the opportunities to choose what we're making ourselves available for, or the fact that we have the bandwidth of membership to have every appointed position filled plus some backups. Sometimes I feel like that makes us sound like we're talking, like
Talking down.
talking down from like an ivory tower of a lodge that is disconnected from the realities and pressures that some of our smaller brethren lodges have to contend with. And the idea of a progressive line is not so much that they want a progressive line, it's that they have to have a progressive line. When a member shows up and they're initiated and passed and raised, they are put in the line because they are the fresh new blood, and that's it, or else we're recycling again.
Just 5 years ago, we were in that situation.
Absolutely. We were after COVID, because there was a period of time where we were on the we can't open an EA lodge struggle bus.
My raising and Sean's got kicked back 3 times because we couldn't open a lodge.
And we didn't have enough members. We couldn't even. The thing is, 148 has always been known for our ability to do our own degree and never have to rely on other people. During that period of time, we couldn't cobble together 148 members plus other lodges, much less just 148 members. So there was a period of time when we were a little bit on the struggle bus too.
Still think we're on a renaissance for Freemasonry.
I think we are too, at least from what we're seeing, because we get
the right way.
We get a lot. We've had in the past, just in your year alone, which started at the end of June, beginning of
July 10th.
Yeah, July 10th. We've had how many new candidates come in asking? I know we've got
3.
3.
And we've got 14 EAs in the pipeline.
We have that.
At some point, we have people that are about to be passed and about to be raised. And we are one of those lodges that are known for doing things slowly too. We're not even trying to crank people through. So the fact that we have this many people expressing interest, I think you're right, Brandy. There's a renaissance going on somewhere. And if you're not part of it and you're not capitalizing on it, you're missing the boat on Renaissance.
And things like this podcast bring us members, which is why we do it.
Yeah, it definitely gets us a lot of
reason.
attention. It's not the only reason we do it, but it's certainly letting people hear our voices and know when they listen to us, when they're prospective members, that we're not these intimidating guys. It certainly helps break the ice, that's for sure.
It also helps to answer emails when a prospective candidate writes your lodge.
How many times have we heard that? My gosh.
Yeah, so I did a post on the Texas Freemasons page. I know this is jumping off topic, but I had a friend who is an odd fellow, and he follows me on Facebook, and he sees all my lodge visits and all the cool stuff that we do in Masonry. So he was interested, and he went to a lodge. He showed up, and I did not know he was going to their meeting, or I would have told him to not show up in shorts. But he didn't know. So he showed up, and pretty much everybody treated him like a stranger. Nobody kind of really was welcoming. They didn't invite him to dinner. They just dismissed him, and he wrote me back, and I put a bad taste in his mouth of what Masonry was. And I told him, I was like, that's not what Masonry is. That's not what I know Masonry is. Because I remember when I reached out to Fort Worth 148, within 48 hours, I got an email back and was like, hey, we meet on this day, come hang out with us. And as soon as I got off that elevator, everybody stood up, they shook my hand, introduced themselves. I felt like I was at home. And Last year, I ran new candidate night, and we probably had about 15 or 16 new candidate nights and probably close to 20 prospective candidates come through last year. And more than 75-80% of them said that they had reached out to another lodge, because that's one of the questions we ask. Have you ever petitioned another lodge, or have you ever visited another lodge, or ever reached out to one? And probably 80% of them have said that they either emailed a lodge or they filled out a petition and never heard back from them. We try to do the right thing and, hey, would you like to get in contact with that lodge? We can reach out to the secretary, the worshipful master, somebody we know. We can facilitate that. And their response was always, why do I want to be part of a lodge that couldn't even answer an email back to me?
Yeah, that's a brutal reality for us. And also, again, not speaking from the ivory tower, there was a period of time where we were on the struggle bus too when it came to returning emails. We had to have a hard look in the mirror about
It
that.
starts with who has access? What's the address?
Yeah, that was the big issue with us, is that we didn't know who had access to the email that is connected to our website. And so suddenly we had to go digging, and then that opened up website problems, and
Yeah.
that opened up access problems, it opened up password problems, it opened up domain problems.
Yeah.
It was a Pandora's box that we had to deal with, but we finally got it dealt with.
Well,
Welcome to technology.
the biggest struggle there is we paid somebody to maintain it a decade ago, and we don't have access to that account anymore. So no clue what that email goes to, but we have our own domain now, our own website. We're completely in control of it.
Yeah, and but how many lodges have done something like that?
But it's asking the right questions and knowing who to ask to figure it out.
And also making sure that there's, I know we're straying afield from our original topic of the progressive line, but I think that this leads into, I think, an important point about the progressive line and about leadership, is that you can't be indispensable. If you're in Freemasonry and you are going to be a leader, you cannot make yourself so invaluable that your exit from the lodge or from the line makes it so that emails disappear. There
Right.
has to be a plan for continuity. There has to be a plan for handing off things like passwords, things like accessibility. All of those things have to be part. When I was in the military, we referred to it as a continuity binder. There was literally a binder that every job description had. And when we were removed from that job and got promoted, or we transferred to another base, we handed that continuity binder off to someone else, and we said, here, look at this. Here's all the passwords to all the accounts you're going to need. Here's all the people you need to contact. Here's this role's person, what they're responsible for. It was 100% continuity. And if we're not doing that as leaders of the lodge in our progressive line, then we are doing a grave disservice, and we're basically planting landmines for our lodge to then
to step on and
like
blow
the
a photo.
email
Right.
bomb that
The
we stepped
the
on.
one major exception, though, is financials. You need a treasurer and a secretary that have access to it that don't change.
Yeah, and that's Cody and I were talking
other
about that
trusted
on the
person.
drive over here today, that there are certain roles that it is actually really desirable for there not to be a significant amount of turnover. Your treasurer and your secretary are one of those places, because I know that if I were to take over I just took on a new job. Some of you, the people in this room, knew this. I started a new job effective May 1st, where I am responsible for an entire nonprofit organization on my own, with a little bit of help from assistants. However, getting into the finances took me, I am still on the struggle bus when it comes to managing the finances. If I were an elected treasurer and this was going to be my only year as treasurer, it would take me 3 to 6 months just to figure it out.
Right.
And then I might be able to struggle bus it on the last 6 months. But then after that 6 months, I'm done. And then somebody else has to spend the next 6 months learning it.
So I think it's interesting to see that in this discussion of the progressive line, that we all have similar and different ideas about the progressive line. So listeners, we know that this is not going to be an easy topic for people to come across. I think something that we can all agree on, though, is that sometimes in a progressive line system, there are going to be things that happen where it's going to get rocky. And so you probably need to have some sort of game plan, and you need to be open and honest with your brothers at lodge about what you're going to do when you hit those times that are going to happen.
I think one of the things with the progressive line is you have to be able to have those hard conversations. So I know, and I feel
By the way, everybody's head in this room just
Yeah.
nodded.
Oh, yeah.
So y'all can't see that on the podcast, but it was a big yes.
So I think one of the things we do good is we hang out outside of lodge, right? So we know each other on a more personal level, where when we do come into lodge and we have to have those hard conversations, like one of the hardest ones we just had to have was canceling MasonicCon this year. So we've been hosting that for 5 years straight, and we had to unfortunately cancel it this year. But you have to have those hard conversations about who is progressing in your line, who is making themselves available, what is not working in your lodge. So I know I've been working with Brandy to create a continental binder, and so I can hand that off to whoever makes themselves available next year so they can add to it. And so they know, hey, this is the person who you call for the Black Tie Gala. This is the person who you email for food. If we need to set up the lodge room for MWSA or Texas Lodge Research, these are your point of contacts. Having those hard conversations sucks at first, but hopefully you'll come out of those conversations better, where you know how to steer the lodge in the right way and what needs to either be created, or there's some stuff kind of tradition, right? There's some stuff that is tradition because it's tradition and probably should be let go and progress and move forward. So you have to have those hard conversations, especially if you're going to go into the line. If your lodge is struggling, like how we used to struggle with membership and not being able to put on our own degrees, we had to take a step back and what are we doing wrong and move forward from there.
It wasn't wrong. You just need to adapt.
And I do know that one of my, Sean, who is our junior past master, we literally just talked about this yesterday, that one of the reasons that he and I are such close friends is that we recognize that when it comes to having difficult conversations, he and I both know that there are no boundaries between us. He cannot offend me when he tells me the truth, and I can't offend him when I tell him the truth. And I think that many of us in this room share that same sentiment, that if I went to Cody or to Brandy or to Omar and told them something that I was like, hey, I've got something that I really need to talk to you about, and it's not going to be comfortable, they're going to be like, tell me because I need to know.
Oh, you mean that we're in a fraternity and we're thinking about 5 points and things like
Right.
that? Oh, surprise.
And so the no boundaries part of the no safe space idea that is our relationship, I think, is in all of our relationships, not just me and Sean, but everybody's relationship in the lodge. When Omar says we hang out outside of lodge meetings, the conversations we have are real, they are frank, they are unvarnished, and they are not for public consumption. We would never have some of the conversations we have in those spaces on the podcast because that's when we're working things out and we're workshopping ideas and we're workshopping what needs to happen in the lodge. So I think that Omar's right on that. Gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap up. It is just about that time. Of course, if you want to reach out to us, you can always reach us on our website, which is fortworthlodge.com. You can also
FORT.
and you can email us through that portal. Let us know your questions, your comments, your concerns. If you have an idea that you want us to talk about, put it there. Also, don't forget to comment below. What are your thoughts on the progressive line? Let us know whether you're listening on Spotify, whether you're listening on Apple, or whatever your podcast source is. Leave a comment. We are paying attention. Very close attention, as a matter of fact. I just about check the comments at least once a day to see if anything's out there. So leave a comment. We love to hear from you.
Shout out to Charles B.
Charles B., you have commented, and we noticed. And
Bronson?
Charles Bronson. That's funny. Maybe it is. Maybe he's a brother. Who knows? But yeah, comment below. Let us know what you think. And as always, we appreciate you listening. If you liked this adventure that you're going on with us, leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're listening to. It does help the algorithm. Let us know that other Masons might be interested in listening to us. Having said all that, my name is Evie Kirkendall, and I am signing off.
Brandy Patton, sign off.
This is Cody Cox signing off.
Omar Galeazzi signing off.